Hey skiers, I'm Jeff from skiessentials.com.
I'm Bob. How's it going?
Welcome back to another 2024 ski comparison. I'm grinning because there are twin tips on the wall.
Happy Twin Tip Day, Jeff.
Yay! No, this is exciting. For this season, we're kind of expanding our twin tip comparisons. I feel like every season we get more and more comments saying, where are the twin tip comparisons?
Yeah.
And I think in the past we've just done one. Maybe last year we did two. I can't remember.
No, we did one because we kept incorporating
Right.
them when we felt like they would go into a free ride or an all-mountain category.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
So this year we've pulled them out of those other comparisons. So a lot of people were asking, especially in the 100, I think that's where people really were like, whoa, where's the Playmaker 101?
Yeah.
Where's the Bent 100? And rightfully so, because a lot of these skis are more popular than some of the skis we looked at in the directional 100 millimeter comparison. So this is twin tips. I think we're ranging from 97 to 104.
Yep.
So a fairly big range in width, and I think you'll see reflected in kind of our thoughts. Not surprising, but generally the narrower skis are better on trail. The wider skis are better in soft snow, and you'll see a lot of good examples of that, like Koala 103, Revolt 104 down there on the end, and then something like Prodigy 2 or like Nightstick 97 kind of on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting to kind of break at that 96, 97. You'll see a lot more competition skis, 96
Totally.
and around there, whereas these, you're not really going to see these in a terrain park event or a slope style event for the most part. I think you pointed out those two.
I'd say there are a handful of exceptions.
Yep.
EDollo.
Yep.
Because that is Henrik's ski and Henrik still competes. There aren't too many faction guys that you're going to see in slope style events. I do think you'll see Oblivion 102, although those guys have an option between 94 and 102.
Yep.
And we can talk about that more when we get there, but I was around a lot of head pro park athletes in the past 6 months, and you'd be surprised how many of them were on the 102, not the 104. So I agree overall with what you're saying, that these are definitely freestyle focused twin tips, but they're not really like competition twin tips.
Yeah, and I think we're both kind of in the same boat. I was thinking about this before we started. I don't ski in the park much, but I've owned a twin tip for 24 years.
Right, since they were invented.
Yeah, since they were invented.
Yeah.
Pretty much the first twin tip.
Yep.
And ever since then. So it's not like you have to be a freestyle skier
Certainly don't.
to enjoy these.
Yeah, and I think that's a big reason why this will be fun, is for a lot of these skis, really for all of these skis, we can talk about kind of which way they lean.
Yeah.
Some of them definitely lean more towards park use, and some of them lean more towards all-mountain capabilities without losing their park capability too, because then they wouldn't be on this wall.
Right.
We would have put them in the directional 100 millimeter comparison. So really exciting. All that said, Bob, I think you're going to start us off. As much as I like this ski, I'm welcome to have you talk about it.
Yeah, well, tough luck. This is a new one from Armada. This is the ARV 100. For this year, we get the new builds in the 88, 94, and the 100. The 106 remains structurally the same. It still uses the denser wood core. This moves to a lighter wood than the old ARV 96 used to be.
Yep.
So just kind of makes it a little bit more energetic and poppy and maneuverable. When we talk about EDollo right after this, we'll kind of see how that change affected not only the ski in general, but its place in Armada's line.
Yep.
Which is certainly, very freestyle and freeride oriented. But that lighter wood core, we still get that ash insert underneath, so it's a little bit less ash overall, really kind of solidifying that underfoot range. But the big story here with construction is the addition of wedge wall technology. So basically what they're doing is they're taking a pre-made sidewall, and I describe it as a tongue and groove.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to communicate what's going on.
So they're milling a section out of the core, and then the sidewall has the tongue, and that goes into the groove.
Like puzzle pieces.
Yeah, and then it's all just sandwiched together, and it creates better cohesion and adhesion between the sidewall and the rest of the core. Not only does this help with just the more consistent feel and flex throughout, I think there's some other skis that do this as well, but having this incorporated in there takes it to the next level. And then also the durability.
Yeah, which is huge.
I think that pressing process really just makes this thing a lot more solid feeling overall from tip to tail. And it's always nice to see kind of, a construction difference. Like this is a new way of putting a ski together. It's not a traditional sandwich sidewall construction. They're using that sidewall as an additional layer, like a vertical layer and some horizontal. So it's a really unique way of doing it.
Yeah, and they've shed drastic amounts of weight, not to like get ahead of you, but we're sub 1,700 grams, which is like, obviously there wasn't a previous ARV 100, but if there was, that would be like 300 grams lighter, and we'll see it in the EDollo.
You'll see it next, where that number jumps for sure. But that kind of puts more of that park influence onto this ski than, maybe you would have said about the previous ARV 96. Just really loading up that energy and making this thing a lot more snappy and poppy.
Yeah.
They've also changed that shape, more to that new modern tapered style.
Yeah.
So more of that early taper going on up here in the front. It's pretty well mirrored in the tail as well. Decent splay back there. They do use that sidewall going into the cap through the back, so that lines up pretty well with where the sidewall ends, the full cap begins, lining up with the rocker. But as opposed to something that's more traditionally tapered like this head, this operates slightly different, emphasizing smoothness through the tips, through the tails, especially takeoffs and landings where you don't want anything potentially hooking or catching. I think that's where this thing really excels.
It made a big difference as an all-mountain ski too. Just its ability in soft snow is like it's significantly enhanced compared to previous ARVs. I suppose with the exception being the 106. But then we're in a different width range. But no, I think they it's hard for me to not think that they improved every single thing about that ski. I suppose maybe the one thing that you could pull out is straight line stability, because now they're pretty light and I suppose they could get deflected more than the heavier ARV 96.
Yeah.
But I think it's better park ski. The shape is better. The durability is awesome. I love that story. And I think this shape, like you kind of said, this modern shape just makes it a better overall skiing experience for most people. It's more forgiving too. It's more approachable. There's just I think they nailed it with these new skis, and it's been cool because pretty much everyone that skis them loves them.
Yeah, definitely a universal appeal to this thing.
Yeah.
It's always been that way, but I think that those that have skied it in the past may have remarked on that. I wish it was a little bit poppier.
Totally.
I wish there was a little bit more
just
energy.
a little bit more liveliness to it, and now it has that in spades. I thought Megan's, obviously this is focusing on men's skis, but Megan's reaction to it was really interesting because she has an FIS race background, but she came to a lot of test days this year and loved the ARWs. So it's just really interesting that it can, just about anybody that gets on it can appreciate what's so great about it.
And speaking to that ARW, it's the same build. It's a different graphic, and they are both offered in the same sizes. Which I think is really cool.
Totally. I've seen a lot of Armada athletes, a lot of male Armada athletes on the ARWs just because they prefer the graphic. Nice to have the option.
I'm one of those people too. I would much rather ski that ARW graphic.
Yeah, but I like the 94 ARW.
Yeah.
I'm indifferent about the 100s.
But important, as that's part of their story too.
Yeah. No, and such a great ski and a really good one to start with. Because it's very well rounded, and I think from there you're going to see it's going to be a fun one to keep coming back to kind of compare off that ski. Next ski is a pretty interesting conversation. This is the EDollo, so another Armada ski, and if you hadn't picked up on it for this, we're just simply going in alphabetical order by manufacturer. This is Henrik Harlow's signature ski. If you're familiar with Henrik Harlow, he is one of the most progressive kind of leading figures in the park skiing world. He has shaped the direction of park skiing over the last couple decades. But what's kind of interesting about Henrik is he's also like sort of a traditionalist. Like he has these like root concepts about what skiing should be for him, and a lot of it like kind of revolves around simplicity.
Yeah.
And then I think you get a lot of that in this ski, which like I think at this point is sort of counterintuitive, because if you think about Henrik and like how creative and progressive he is, you might think that his skis would be more creative and progressive. But to me, the ARV is like far more dynamic for most skiers.
Right.
But when you're as good as Henrik, you can take something like this and like literally do anything on it.
Yeah.
It's just very interesting. So this is a much more traditional build in here, and here we have poplar and ash, and the result is a significantly heavier ski. We're 2,100 grams. So again, like when you look at Henrik and watch him ski, I don't think many people would be like, yeah, his skis are heavy, because they don't look heavy when he's skiing them.
Or you'd think that they're noodles, or that they're light, noodly skis.
Right, where this ski is pretty heavy, and like it's literally one of the stiffest skis up here.
Yeah.
Which is just really interesting, because I bet at least half the people, if you had them guess before going through this video, they would not guess that this, and maybe more like 75% would think that this is going to be soft. So it's heavy and it's stiff. And then the other thing that I find interesting about it is there's not like a tremendous amount of rocker, and then there's no taper.
Yeah.
So Henrik is known for nose butters. You know, he kind of like made that nose butter triple cork 1620 just infamous at the X Games. And a lot of people, when they think about nose butters, they think about more of that shape, or Playmaker shape. This makes it more challenging. But again, when you're someone like Henrik, it doesn't really matter. So it's a cool ski. I want to look at tail rocker too, because there's even less tail rocker back there. So back to what I was saying, it's a cool ski, and I was actually just reading an article about Henrik and how he tends to prefer to ski, if he can, one pair of skis all year long, and like makes sense, because this is a strong, durable ski that's going to withstand high speed all mountain skiing, urban rails, just a ton of impacts. Like it'll live up to that.
Right.
And then it also lets him, like, Henrik loves skiing. He doesn't just love park skiing, he loves skiing. So this ski, you know, it is like, it's kind of directional with more tip rocker than tail rocker. And then like the mount point, actually, I was looking at it before we started filming. There's only one recommended mount point, and it's not true center.
Yeah.
And Henrik also is known for, like, you know, if he rips a binding out, instead of replacing the ski, he'll just move his bindings to another spot. So
I'd say, I'm going with this.
yeah, you know, it's like it's the skier, not the ski, for somebody like Henrik. So I just think his pro model ski is interesting, because I think it's very counterintuitive compared to what most people would think.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's a 98 millimeter twin tip with like a pretty sturdy build. So it's not like it's going to be that much different from an Unleashed or a Black Ops 98 that kind of have these sturdier, more directional mentalities to them.
Yeah, in fact, those three skis might be the most similar, kind of on towards that end of the spectrum, which I'd throw Oblivion 102 in there too. But you know, you see the crossovers in their shape.
Yep.
Most of those skis don't use much taper, and that really, really affects their performance.
Yeah, and this next one kind of takes, I think this next one's might be the lightest on the wall. We'll see in a second, but we definitely are dropping at least a few 100 grams into this bent 100
Certainly
here.
back closer to ARV 100.
Yeah, so 1,690 something grams
Pretty much
here.
identical to
Yeah.
ARV 100.
And this one, we've talked about this for a long time. One of the more directional twins on the wall in terms of shape and profile.
And mount point. You
mount
got that
point
like
too.
10 centimeter range of mount points
Yep.
on there.
Yeah, and you probably aren't going to see a whole lot of these in park competitions.
Yeah.
But from like a range perspective, this one definitely has a lot of bases covered.
Maybe the most.
I noticed about the Prodigy too. Like, look at the length range in the Prodigy on that sticker there. Like, there's 7 different sizes?
There's 6, but yeah.
But a big range.
Yep.
It's going to accommodate a lot of different skiers, from
Totally.
that tweener skier all the way up through large people like myself who
Yep.
can ski the 188, or what is it, the 180?
189 in that ski.
In that ski. So there's that huge range of sizes and applications that go along with this bent 100. Still dealing with that full poplar wood core. Not a whole lot else going on here in terms of construction materials. What they do is play with the thinness of that material. So we're really going to that thin cap top sheet here.
Yep.
And that's going to make this thing quite flexible in the shovel. When you add in that horizon tech, that curved or angled shovel shape here in tips and the tails, you're certainly getting that more playful and floaty mentality. In softer snow, I feel like, we've had success in the past getting this thing up on edge and having it perform well in a carved turn. On firmer snow, that's where you're starting to see the thinness and the lightweight start to become more of a liability than an asset. So
Yeah, you got to stay super centered.
yeah.
There's no initiating a carve from the shovel on that ski.
Nope.
But if you do it laterally and you're lightweight like me, it's fine.
And there is the camber to back it up.
Totally.
Like, there's not a lot of tail rocker here, so the effective edge is pretty long, especially in the back. There's
Yeah.
more tip rocker than tail rocker.
It's similar to EDollo in that sense.
Yeah, and that's kind of a difference when you move from here up to the bent 110, is the 110 then gets the more rockered shape of the 120, whereas this and the 90 share a shape and a profile. So even though this is wider than the 90 and certainly more soft snow oriented, it's no different in terms of that profile. So you're getting the same effective edge, which kind of leans it more to that all mountain side of the spectrum.
Yeah, totally. We had a really fun day on that ski this year. Maybe some of you have seen it because we put out that video of just kind of going through the motions on snow in a single day. And it's just, I think it's really cool when you get, we hiked up and skied Rock Garden, which was awesome. And I thought those skis were pretty perfect for the snow conditions that we skied up there. It wasn't super soft, but it's like, I think that the nicest thing about it is up there is like kind of a no-fall zone.
It's pretty technical.
It might not look like it, but like I consider it a no-fall zone because there's trees just buried underneath the snow, and I've seen people kind of impale themselves, which is scary. So I thought the bent 100 worked great up there because it's reliable, but really easy to ski. You don't have to fight it, but then it's not gonna wash out on you unexpectedly. Again, there's not a tremendous amount of tail rocker back there. And then you were ripping it in the bumps.
Yeah, I love this ski
which
in the
was
bumps.
cool to see. It's got to be one of the better bump skis up here because the tip is compliant, but then the tail is supportive.
Yep.
Again, you're not going to wash out on it. And then I went and skied some park on it, and it's great. I don't think it's the best park ski up here, but it's perfectly fine. You can ski it at a really high level in the park, and again, you have that just wild range of mount points. And if you go all the way up there to +6,
you're right in the middle.
it's pretty darn symmetrical and balanced.
Yeah, you're dealing with the camber issue, I think.
Yeah, I think if you go to +6, you really take away some of its all mountain performance. Our good friend Carl He just picked up a pair of these. I don't think you knew that.
I didn't know that. I'm glad
And
for
Carl and I were talking a lot about mount point, and for Carl, we went like right about +3.
Yeah.
Because he's a big guy. You'll actually see some footage of Carl on this ski. He's a big, strong guy. He's kind of built like Bob, except he's a lumberjack too. So
He's a legit lumberjack.
He's like super, super strong guy, like multi-generational Vermonter lumberjack, or that's a good way to describe Carl. So for somebody like him, if you went all the way up there to +6, all of a sudden it would just be a park ski for him, and he wouldn't be able to do anything else on it. And I've recommended similar things to a lot of you. +4 is still pretty darn balanced, but then you're not so far forward in the camber that it's gonna do some weird things.
Yeah.
But such a fun ski.
Yeah.
And the affordability is off the charts too.
No,
I kind of wish
super
we had
budget-friendly.
written down prices for this, but you guys can find prices pretty easily. Just click through to the written comparison, and you'll see them right there. Next ski is super interesting. This is the DPS Koala 103. I feel like when this ski first came out, I was very excited about it because it felt like it was marking like a different direction or a different focus than you'd previously seen from DPS. And I certainly appreciate the ski. It's not exactly what I wished for. I kind of wish it was more of a freestyle ski, mostly because DPS already has so many good off-piste skis, like powder skis.
Right.
Where, like, to me, the best part of this ski is its off-piste soft snow performance. I don't love the way it feels in the park. I really like the way it feels in soft snow. So then it's like, it becomes harder to choose. But I suppose if you're a DPS customer and you love soft snow skiing and you want a twin tip, this is your only choice.
Yeah, they've made it.
Yeah. It isn't as expensive as some of those, what are we in now, Kaizen skis, because this uses more like foundation construction. So it's poplar, bamboo, and then we get those like carbon stringers, those unidirectional carbon stringers. It is an interesting ski, like I said. It's not super heavy, so 1,820 grams, and this is pretty long. What length do we have here? I think 184. So it's certainly not heavy, but it's kind of stiff.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a lot of people have gotten on this ski and had the same reaction. And I think what happens there is you look at the shape and, you know, like the shape starts to kind of look like Playmaker or like Reckoner or even like Chronic or Blend, but then it's with that stiffer flex, it doesn't react exactly the way that you would intuitively think it would.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that word intuitive because for me it took, I think, 2 to 3 runs to realize that it is a little too stiff in here to pressure it the way you do a Chronic 101.
It just doesn't bend the same.
Yeah, so this is the one where you want to ski it in the middle.
Yeah.
And you find that with the other DPS skis that are more heavily tapered because they too are stiff with a more carbon construction. But as soon as you get off the shovel of that thing, that's where it starts to make more sense.
Yeah, and just let this tip do its thing.
Yeah.
Like let it float.
Let
it eat up the terrain.
Totally.
Like that's kind of what you want to do on this ski is like almost let the ski do all the work and you're just kind of along for the ride. Because that, again, I think like you were saying, it's like it's harder to manipulate than some of these other skis where, you know, some of these skis I could take it with one hand and just bend the tip in half practically and like clearly I can't do that with this ski. So like I hate to use the word planky because it comes along with negative connotations, I think, when people describe skis, but it's like there's some substance to it which gives it that more like plank-like feel, which depending on how you ski it can be a benefit. Like it was cool watching Matt Stramecki ski it because he's a big guy, he skis pretty aggressively, and something like this was extremely supportive of that kind of skiing.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting.
Yeah, there's a learning curve, and I think it's a little bit more suited to softer snow, and we kind of talked about that, and the Revolt 104
They're the best powder skis.
The best powders on the wall.
Yeah.
And this one just does it a little differently than the Revolt here, which is a more playful option.
Yeah, I'd suppose if I had to pick a favorite between those two for powder, I'd have to go with Revolt, which has a lot to do with the way that they shape the tail. The tail gets so kind of narrow and pointy on the Revolt that it gives it like just crazy maneuverability, where this is like, again, there's just more substance to it. Like that's, you know, there's a lot back there. There's plenty of rise, but it's still a wide, big ski back there.
Like natural features, backcountry booters, that type of thing, I think
Be a
Koala
great backcountry jump.
A lot for. And they have the two wider versions too.
Yeah, totally.
Which
they're big.
Yeah, and that seems to be the focus. Like, let's build something that works well in natural conditions.
Yeah, which makes sense because they're probably very athlete driven.
Yeah.
And their DPS is what, Utah based?
Yeah.
A lot of backcountry jump buildings in Utah. It's kind of like the mecca for backcountry jumps.
This Dynastar M-Free 99 is a wonderful option here for a lot of skiers that are mixing off-piste, you know, opportunities with, you know, kind of resort-based creativity.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a big range here. This is a
huge
really
range
well-rounded ski.
It's interesting. It's been around for what, 3 years now?
Yeah.
And I think part of it is just like how it compares to other skis, and other skis have come out since its introduction. But I feel like I used to look at it and think it was like the smeariest, most maneuverable, surfiest ski that you could possibly imagine in this width range.
Yeah.
And now like that thing's way surfier.
Right.
So it gives you like a new perspective of M-Free. And yeah, I think you're right. I think it's actually really well rounded.
Yep. And this was kind of what I skied on for a number of years, was Dynastar's twin tip. You know, the slicer was a big hit for a lot of skiers around here.
The slicer is like almost that Black Ops.
Yeah, so this is a little bit different in that it uses not only Dynastar's hybrid core, so polyurethane along the sidewalls, and then that central poplar core wrapped in fiberglass. So there is some good smoothness and, you know, some technology built in, similar build to what we see in the M Pros without the metal, but it really just makes this thing feel very smooth, you know, full sidewall through here, and that gives, you know, just a lot of grip and confidence in the edge. You know, a little bit flexible in the shovel, especially like mid shovel, maybe not the very end. And then, you know, a nice kind of smooth tapered shape.
Yeah.
This makes it super maneuverable. This is a little bit more like M Pro style in the shovel.
The tip, for sure.
And when we talk about M Pros from an all mountain perspective, it's very easy to get that tip to go where you want it to go. And then with M Pro, they have thicker and wider metal in the tail. So this kind of basically just flips the tip and puts it in the tail and eliminates that stiffness and kind of rugged nature of the M Pro, putting it in this M-Free mentality. We're just under 2,000 grams in this 179, so like there's some bulk there. You know,
it's not the lightest thing in the world.
No, but it's super maneuverable and really playful. Like we talked about with the bent and how that does not share the same profile with the wider skis, like this one does. So versus the 108, this is a very similar rocker profile and taper shape, the 99 to the 108. So you're getting similar dimensions or similar footprint just in that narrower shape. But a lot of splay here, a lot of rocker, just super easy to get this thing from turn to turn. And then again, very nice longer splay. You know, it's not like traditional twin tip when we look at Oblivion. You know, we'll see
more taper in that ski, more rocker.
You can kind of see the more abruptness of the splay in something like this, whereas this is a little bit more modern and progressive. But really well-rounded, big range. You know, I just think that a lot of people that are interested in twin tips, they're twin tip curious, but they're not going to go in the park. They'll be really happy on this. And then I know you've had some positive park experiences here.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever skied it like as fully as a park ski, but I've definitely like messed around with skiing at Switch and like doing little 180s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm always hesitant to bash people's demo skis around in the park, and I don't know that I've ever had a flat ski that's my own. The rep did write my name in a Sharpie on the tail of a ski once
must
upon
mean
a
it's
time,
yours.
but then he took it back, so I
Yeah.
don't know what that was all about. But no, I think you're right. I think like it's a better park ski than here,
Yeah.
for sure. And I think like in a lot of ways, it's just as good as bent as a park ski. It's just a little different, and those same differences are true like as a tree ski. I think it's a really good tree ski too, but in bent you get a lot of responsiveness. You know, a lot of like kickback from the tail, so to speak. Where this ski is much more surfy, smeary, like that hybrid PU material in there. That also makes it really smooth. So it's just got a slightly different personality. And then there's a limit. I don't know that I would ever mount it true center because the tip rocker is a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But certainly a very, very well-rounded ski, and it's really nice. It's nice that I've gained some appreciation for its stability. It's certainly not the most powerful ski in the world, and if you ski it back-to-back to an M Pro 99, it is a world of difference, which is probably why I originally had that mentality of just it's super soft and super like surfy, because I probably skied it back-to-back with an M Pro 99 the first time I ever skied it. And yeah, it's interesting. You know, it's more ski than a Playmaker, it's more ski than a Reckoner 102, it's certainly more ski than a Blend. So yeah, don't just think it's a slouch because of the shape and kind of where it falls in Dynastar's catalog.
And like my one caution, so the 179 measures 179. The 185 measures 182. So if you're looking for the
that's
longer
fascinating.
size,
There isn't one?
there really isn't one. And that's kind of, I wish that there was an actual 185, or maybe they could call it a 188 and measure the 185. I don't care. But,
Sure.
you know, if you are my size and think the 185 is going to be your length, just pause and remember it's about 3 centimeters shorter.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? 179 works great for me.
Right, I'm sure it does. But you know, even then, it was fine. I just wish it was. I wish it was more.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Really fun footage that we have on that ski. I'm just remembering now because we've got Carl and Grant skiing it, and they're very different skiers.
Right.
And you can kind of see it working better for Grant. You know, Carl, like we were talking about, a big, strong, powerful guy. Yes, the ski has some strength to it, but I think with Carl, like even like the shape of the bent helps because there's just a longer effective edge. Where, you know, Grant is more well known around here for going and finding technical, like touring terrain.
Yeah.
You know, he does a lot of skinning, and you can see it coming through and how he was skiing it, just making beautiful, quick, short turns down the nosedive S turns.
Man after my own heart.
Next ski is this Elan Playmaker 101. If you've been following along with our content over the past year, you're probably aware of this ski, and you probably know that I'm quite fond of it. And as a refresher or a reminder, the first time I skied it, I was disappointed.
I remember.
Yeah. It's hard for me to remember because I've gained so much fondness for it over the year. But, you know, historically speaking, with Elan as a brand, the thing that really caught my attention, and I'd say your attention too, Bob, was those Ripstick Black editions. That really put the brand on the map for me, and it was just stuck in my mind. And when I got Playmaker, I was thinking like, whoa, Ripstick Black, but a twin tip? And it is like pretty much the opposite of that. And we'll talk about the construction in a little bit. But this is easily one of the most playful, most agile, quickest, most maneuverable, just like smeariest, surfiest. That's a 6.
That's
adjectives.
enough.
That's pretty good. It's got to be the one of the best. But I really like the way that Elan built it because they built in some precision, and I think like the engineering that Elan has put into this ski is really commendable.
Would you say, before you move on, did you spend more time on that, or do you think Unleashed this past year? Yeah. Because like I saw you on that a whole lot.
It's a great question.
Must be pretty even.
It's got to be pretty even. And you know what's really fun? They're very, very different.
I know.
And they're my two favorite.
Yeah. I mean, that just goes to show you that there's not like one thing that's going to work the best for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. And like, I should add a caveat to that. I like every ski up here. So it's really hard for me to say that two are my favorite.
Yeah.
Because like, if you were just like, well, you can only ski that one for the rest of your life, it'd be like, okay,
All right.
that's fine.
Yeah.
So it's like, something about these two skis I think is really cool. And I really like that they took them and they focused them in certain directions rather than just like, here's a twin tip that does everything.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why I like them so much. But anyways, so Elan uses a tube light wood core in this ski, very similar that we see in ripsticks. But instead of carbon rods kind of running throughout the whole ski, they're really just focused underfoot here. So that leaves the tips and tails of this ski very, very soft. You know, ripstick non-black editions are already pretty soft, but this takes it to another level. Like the ski is very, very soft. You do still get some strength underfoot. You know, you can probably see the thickness there, but it's not, strength is not its highlight by any means. Just over 1,700 grams. So really in line with ARV 100, with Bent 100, it is right there as like one of the lighter twin tip skis that you're gonna find, and that absolutely comes through in its performance. It is just insanely quick.
Yep.
And then looking at shape, the shape really reminds me of ARV 100, of Chronic 101.
Yep.
Which is interesting because those are all brand new skis. And we talk about like the modern shaping concept, and those three skis are maybe the best examples on this wall of what Bob and I consider to be like modern twin tip shaping. So a lot of tip rocker up here, a lot of tail rocker too, you know, similar to what we were looking at in ARV 100, like pretty symmetrical, not completely symmetrical, but pretty darn close to the point where you can mount it pretty darn center, very similar to ARV 100. There is taper, but it's not drastic taper, so that really helped me. Again, as like a lighter weight skier, I don't need a tremendously stiff ski to get it to hold an edge and perform well in a carved turn. So I think like having the effective edge run through the shovel and the tail of the ski when you're at a high edge angle really helps. When you're not on a high edge angle, when you're riding a flatter ski, it practically feels like there's nothing on your feet in a good way. Now, the Playmaker 101 is not for everyone. I'd say it's not for you, at least not in a 180 centimeter length.
That's a blanket statement for me and Elan.
Sure.
I cannot do the second longest length in any of them.
Yeah.
I need to be on the
Maybe
longest.
black editions, you could get away with it, but still.
I wouldn't want to, knowing what I know about the 188.
Sure.
But I will say that my opinion of this changed drastically.
Skiing the
because I
188.
skied 180 for the first half dozen days.
Yeah.
And then skied 188 and said, okay, I get it. This is good.
And Matt Stromecki had the same example or the same experience too. So it does lack some stability. You know, whether you're just like letting it run straight down the fall line through choppy terrain, it's gonna skip around and get deflected a little bit, and that's okay because it's intended to be playful and fun rather than like a hard charging down the fall line ski.
Yeah.
And then I experienced a little bit of the same thing in the park, which I think is fine. Like, I washed out on it a couple times. I went big on a 7 and washed out, and like, it wasn't that fun, but it was my fault for going huge. And like, I don't really want to know what would happen if the ski was stiffer. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, you're into like ACL territory. I don't think I would have torn my ACL, but like, that's because I know what to do to not tear my ACL.
Yeah.
But like it would be a little bit more punishing. So there is like a lack of stability for big landings. But again, in the park, you shouldn't be like landing way in the back seat. Like, that's not a sustainable thing to do anyways. So do your tricks right, and the Playmaker is fantastic. But you know, there are skiers out there like like Carl. Like this wouldn't be a great park ski for Carl because he's just so big. And the ski would be more prone to washing out on landings. But for someone like me, it's awesome. And it's just so much fun to ski. It really makes like skiing moguls and off-piste terrain for me like significantly easier than, especially than on something like the Unleashed 98, because this ski is just, it's so easy to release the tail edge and get it to surf, which I suppose is why they call it surf rocker.
Yeah, I had a pretty easy time throwing that thing sideways and really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not like my intuitive style.
Right.
And so the fact that I was able to do it like with ease.
It promotes that.
Yeah, and enjoyed myself doing it, I
Yeah.
think speaks to the nature of that ski.
Yeah. No, it's so fun. And I like the 91 too. It's hard for me to pick a favorite between those two skis, but yeah, I'm just kudos to Elan for going outside of what their company is known for and coming up with a really cool ski and making it white and pink.
Right.
Like, whether that's your thing or not, like, you got to give it to Elan for at least trying something.
Yep. No, I mean, focused on fun, and that's all.
Exactly.
That's the part.
Exactly.
And I'd say this one falls in the very same category. This is the Faction Prodigy 2. And
Yeah,
it
just
is
a little more ski, probably.
a little more ski, a couple hundred more grams, 1980, just about. And this really falls into the category of like traditional twin tip, 98 millimeter underfoot twin tip.
What did you, before we started filming, you said that's your twin tip skier's favorite twin tip?
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. Like, that's like, yeah, like it's your park skier's favorite all mountain ski.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I've always thought about the Prodigy, is like, you're a park skier, but you want all mountain performance.
Yeah.
Rather than some of these skis, you're an all mountain skier, you want some park performance. And a lot of that could be said for a number of these skis so far.
Yeah. And this kind of follows the same line as a bunch of these other ones where we're dealing with a pretty standard lightweight poplar wood core. We do get those thicker bases and edges on this ski, so adding that durability, that park performance, and with that vertical sidewall tapering to cap. So what was the other one we talked about earlier? I think it was the... I don't even remember
It's got to be
anymore.
this one.
I don't know specifically. Probably I mean, it happens a lot where we see these skis that when the sidewall ends, the cap and the rocker starts.
Like, basically all of them?
All of them? I mean, that's
Not quite all of them.
not all of them, but the ones that go from sidewall to cap, you know, that seems to be a pretty common theme, and it works well. It basically divides the ski into playful and then more versatile.
Yep.
So your freestyle portions are up here, and in the tail, this is where you're able to get the ski to bend easier and more to your whims, kind of, you know, bringing about that creativity and more playfulness and just more freestyle properties. And then underfoot, I mean, this is a full sidewall underfoot ski, so you are getting that resulting performance there. You're getting that nice edge control and grip throughout, and that's really good news if you're looking for versatility in your skis.
Yep. Quick note on Faction. I bet a lot of you are wondering where the Mana 2 is, and the Mana 2 isn't in this building anywhere, unfortunately, so we couldn't put it on this wall, but it is cool that Faction has a lot of skis that could go on this wall, which makes sense for a company like Faction. Excuse me. The Mana 2 is way more powerful.
Yeah.
So this ski is like more playful and more well-rounded, but it's more ski and more stable and like kind of trustworthy at speed than Playmaker. So although it's less ski than Mana 2, it's more ski than a lot of things up here.
I'd say this like this to the Mana is the ARV to EDollo, kind of a similar difference between them.
And even the shapes are actually pretty similar.
Yeah, and like that Mana 2 definitely feels like that EDollo when it comes to just the weight on your foot.
Yeah.
You know, there's definitely some substance there.
Yep, you feel it the moment you click in.
Yeah, but this one really has that nice kind of easy flex in the front and then stiffer underfoot. And like if you were to kind of square off this tail, like you'd have a very good directional ski here. You know,
Totally.
That's kind of what I think about these Prodigies is like with the flex and the build, you're really looking at a fun and interesting ski. But if you squared that thing off I think that you're looking at one of the better and more engaging directional skis out there.
Yeah.
But, add in the twin tip, and then you're just increasing, the possibilities. And like we pointed out before, 159 to 189.
Yeah, huge
Just
range.
a huge
there.
range of sizes.
Yeah.
So a lot of different skiers of varying ages, abilities, degrees of accomplishment within the sport.
12-year-old up-and-coming park skier all the
Yeah.
way through Alex Hall.
Right. All happy.
Yeah, totally.
And
Yeah,
that seems to be the theme.
yeah, and it's a great ski. It's a staple in this category.
Yeah.
Faction's not as popular as a brand as most other brands up here, but Prodigy too is well known by these skiers and in this group of skis, and rightfully so. It's really good. This next ski, this Nightstick 97, I find to be very, very similar to a Prodigy 2, which I bet Fischer is happy to hear, because that's kind of the target market that they're going after with this Nightstick 97 is a park skier who wants all-mountain performance too. And that was kind of what a lot of people did with that Ranger 102. The ski is very different, but it at least provides an option from Fischer for skiers with that more freestyle mindset. I've talked about the Ranger 102 a lot, and it does have some rise in the tail, but it has more directional characteristics than that pink ski did. So now, if you were a pink skier and you used it a lot in the park, now you've got Nightstick 97. Pretty simple construction in this ski, but they do one cool thing with metal. Just a poplar wood core, and then they put some metal just underfoot, which they kind of cite mostly as providing more durability. So for rail impacts and stuff like this, I took these to Whistler this summer, and I don't remember, I did the math at one point, how many rails I probably slid on them, but the answer is a lot.
Yeah.
And there's no edge cracks. There aren't even really any there's no edge damage really at all, which is commendable, and I think I got to give a lot of credit to that metal underfoot.
With a pivot,
Doesn't
15?
really count with a pivot on it, but I know from experience that this ski is about 1,950 grams. Goes to show how heavy pivots are.
Yeah.
That we're up at 2,800. But nice kind of middle of the road weight, and the same is true with the flex pattern. It's right. I think if we were to organize this wall as softest to stiffest, I think this ski would still be right here, because it's right in the middle. And I really like it. I really, really got to know it well out in Whistler, and I love the way it feels in the park. I did have some interesting experience with mount point. I tried to go further forward than the +2 line, which is the furthest forward, and then ultimately realized that I kind of screwed it up and went back to +2. And happy to report that although that is not true center, it's a few 2 to 3 centimeters off, if I remember correctly. It skied park great. I love the way that this thing felt in the park. Yeah. It's the swing weight is light enough. The shape is very catch-free, which we'll look at in just a second. Actually, we don't need it on the scale anymore.
I like it. I like the
2,800 grams. Yeah. So good amount of tip rocker up here. There is some early taper, but not a ton of early taper. And then really the same is true in the tail. Good amount of rocker, good amount of taper. So it's very catch-free for rails, for landings on jumps, anything like that. I really enjoyed the way that it felt in the park. I really enjoy the way that it skis softer snow and off-piste terrain too. Basically for the same exact reason. It feels kind of strong and stable underfoot from camber and a thick core and that metal. But then the tips and tails are just very, very maneuverable and catch-free and pretty forgiving. The one thing that I didn't love about it is how it skis groomers.
Yeah, and I get the sense that there's a lot of Ranger influence here. And then you see it with the partial metal underfoot. So there's some of that going on, but you're not getting that in the tail.
Yeah, you just don't get much bite
Yeah.
out of it on a groomer, which is fine, because
Right.
it's a 97 underfoot twin tip. Go buy a frontside ski if you want it to be super responsive on a groomer, and it can still carve a turn. It's just the same is true with a lot of these skis. You have to be balanced and centered and initiate laterally, and then you can't expect too much out of your skis from like edge grip and stability. So if you enter it with a reasonable expectation and like a good solid mindset, you're not just like thinking you're Superman, then you'll have a great time.
Yeah.
And again, if you're focused more on park and off-piste terrain and playfulness, you're going to love it, and you're never going to think about that lack of bite on a groomer ever.
Which is kind of a nice segue to the next ski on the list.
Well, there's a lot of skis over there. I'd say
I think my side's more carvy.
the 3 best groomer skis are over there, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I do think your side is more carvy, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Not many of these skis should be carvy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this, if this category was all focused on edge grip and torsional stiffness, like what are we doing?
Right. But that's what this one does.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
We'll continue the segue. Go for it, Bob.
This is the new Head Oblivion 102, and just kind of, here, you can take that one.
I'll take the white one.
Continuing our kind of segment and, continued love affair with these new 101, 102 twin tips. I mean,
There's so many.
It's a banner year.
Like they read my mind this year. They're like, let's not come out with any directional skis.
Right.
How about everybody make a twin tip that's 100 underfoot?
Yeah. And it's interesting to see.
I'm here for it.
What came out and how like the ARV compares to, the line Chronic and the Playmaker versus this, which
is really like
it's a lighter and more reactive version of that.
Which, like, it's really interesting to think about. Like, Henrik Harlow is one of the best skiers in the world.
Yeah.
I was watching Cole Richardson on this ski in Whistler, and, like, it looked like you could do anything on it. And he's one of the best park skiers in the world right now.
Yep.
So it's cool to see how this shape is, like, sometimes a preference for those super, super high-level skiers because they need so much consistency and reliability, and that's what you get out of this shape.
And, poor Cole Richardson stuck doing those big mountain lines on a Core 117. And,
now he's got an Oblivion, 111?
116.
16?
Yeah. So I think Head said, hey, we got a guy here.
Right.
Like we're gonna let him run with these wider Oblivions and make so he doesn't have to ski, freestyle on a Core 117 in the backcountry.
Which he impressively was doing just fine.
Totally. I had no issues watching that, but little bit different in the construction of this and that wider one versus the narrower versions of these Oblivions. This is basically kind of a pared down version of core construction. So it does have Karuba wood core. They actually use the PET stringers, that plastic, recycled bottle stringers through the middle here. So a little bit of an ecological advantage. And then they get the 2 laminates of carbon that the core skis get. So there's like dual carbon laminate in this ski.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
Yep, with the damping layers and all of the things that kind of come along with the core. They do it in a thinner profile, and then, I think that plastic in here does take some of the weight off. So 1,734 grams, pretty light for how reactive and stiff.
Certainly sounds like a Head ski to me in the year 2023.
It's pretty amazing. So when we're talking about the carving capabilities of these skis, this one stands out because it does have that stiffer flex both torsionally and longitudinally. When we talk about Reckoner and how they're able to fine-tune that torsional stiffness with the carbon, this is a little bit more, I would say, blocky of a technique. They're just saying, here's your carbon laminates, go have some fun.
Yep.
So you are getting a more energetic and reactive feel from this twin tip. And then when that's paired with a very traditional shape, this is what I feel like twin tips look like
10 years
10
ago.
years ago.
Yeah.
There's minimal rocker, there's that abrupt splay, as opposed to that Dynastar
or even Playmaker or a lot of the things that we look at and we say modern shape.
Yeah. This is traditional.
Yeah.
So longer rocker, more splay at the end. Still like that same distance, but it takes less time to get there. And then we see that in the tail as well. So very, very similar tip and tail. And then a long effective edge as a result. No taper, and that's resulting in a very long turn radius. Most of these are 22.8, so almost 23.
Big turn.
And then you get into the longer, the 189 centimeter length, and that is even longer. It's like 24, almost 25 meters.
Yeah, where most of these hover in the like 17, 18, 19 range.
Yeah, so this is an outlier in a bunch of different regards. I had a blast on this thing. I thought that this skied really well, and I would say that since I'm more of a traditional and directional skier, that this ski lines up better with what I like to do.
Yeah, it wasn't surprising to me at all that you got along really well with that ski.
And you get it up on that higher edge angle, and you know, when you access that side cut, like it actually comes around really well. It's not like it just wants to go straight. Because there's no taper, it wants to turn.
Yeah, you can hook it in nicely. Yeah.
Which, like, I really like.
Yeah.
And it's not really that surprising from, you know, an application standpoint, but also like a construction, because I really like the head core skis as well.
Right.
So it's not a huge leap to think that someone who's heavier and likes to make more round, consistent turns, that this would work well.
You also skied like 10 years ago, all those twin tips with this shape.
Yeah.
You know what to do with this shape. I could see like a 17-year-old who's only skied things like with more rocker getting on that and being like, well, what is this?
Right.
But, you know, again, you get those skiers like Cole Richardson, he's pretty young. And it's just amazing. Like once you reach the necessary skill level, you can do whatever you want on a shape like that.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, it's not as forgiving as some of these other skis with more rocker and taper. It's not as maneuverable in soft snow. It can be a little more tiring, but if you're a professional athlete, those things don't matter.
Right. I'd say my one axe to grind is the graphics. I wish they just made them either 2 black ones or 2 white ones, as opposed to one of each. You got to find a buddy.
You got to find a friend and trade.
Buy 2 pairs and then trade.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Which, like, I'm excited. I can't wait to see the first just all black or all white pair of Oblivion 102s on the hill. I'm going to go up to that person and be like, hey, good job.
Right. You either bought 2 pairs or found a friend that wanted one too.
Or like maybe convinced a shop to split up a pair. And that's probably not, I probably shouldn't say that because then the serial numbers won't match and you won't get them warranted.
That's a small problem.
So you didn't hear it from me.
Yeah. And it's also interesting how these skis are, I'd say, are most carbon focused of this group.
Yeah, I mean, Koala's got a lot in it.
Playmaker's got the tube, so there's some interesting uses of carbon, but...
Yeah, I mean, the carbon spectral braid in this ski is kind of the story.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying. This is the Reckoner 102 from K2, and this is very, very, very different than an Oblivion 102. Same width, there's not drastic differences in their shape, but boy, are they very, very different skis.
Weight's about the same,
Weight's about the same, 1,720 grams. So carbon spectral braid in this ski is really cool. We see it used in the Mindbender carbon skis as well. In Reckoner, they do it differently. So the weave is tightest underfoot and longest or loosest in the tips and the tails. So in Mindbenders, it's tight up here and loose in the tail. And this ski is loose, tight, loose. And basically what they're doing here is they're giving you just an insane amount of playfulness in the tips and tails, but some bite underfoot. And I have always loved the way that these things ski. I definitely think it's one of those things that if you're a heavier skier like Bob, you can push right through it. But for somebody like me, it's so fun and so easy to bend into like a really short radius car. It's so soft. It's so ridiculous. But, you know, we've talked about it a lot. Yeah. Like when you have a soft longitudinal flex, but strong torsional stiffness, you get these deep, trenchy carves. The other side of this ski is the shape, and the fact that it's pretty darn light makes it very agile. So a lot more rocker, especially in like length, than we see in that Oblivion 102. Like quite a lot.
Yeah, it's totally different.
And then the same is true in the tail And there's not a lot of taper in this ski, but if you line it up next to the Oblivion 102, it is exactly lined up with that ski on our wall, there's certainly more taper in this ski. So certainly edge grip and carving is not its highlight. In fact, you could put a skier on here and they would just be like, I don't even know what you're talking about, because I could see a heavier skier just not even be able, like, getting it to hold an edge at all.
Yeah.
You'd have to be like really balanced, and that's a good way to think about this ski. I think it demands a lot of finesse. I do not think you should buy this ski if you're the Carl Lipskis of the world that are going to bash your skis through whatever. This ski needs to be skied with some finesse and some care. You know, I think it's not the strongest ski in the world. That soft flex. I feel like there have been some people that buy it and don't love what it does. So you need to remember that this ski is super soft, super agile, super playful. It's a dream in soft snow. You know, it's the narrowest sibling of 112 and 122. Right. So when you design a collection of skis that include 112 and 122, not surprising that the 102 gets some really good soft snow performance too. Good float, super, super smooth and just maneuverable and surfy in soft snow. And I think really good in the park too. I think like in the park that finesse and care really comes to the forefront of the conversation. It's not like, I don't worry about durability of this ski, but I've seen some heavier, powerful skiers have, I don't want to call them issues, but it can get a little beat up, a little chipped here and there. But if you're my size or a little heavier and you ski with a lot of finesse, you're going to absolutely love this thing in the park. The shape just begs for a big mute grab. I have no idea what it, I don't know what it is about it, but whenever I look at the ski and whenever I have them on my feet, I have like this weird visceral reaction that I have to grab mute. Not like Johnny Mosley, like modern mute. Like a nice, like right there. Doesn't it just, like there's the shape, it wants your hand to be right there, Bob.
And that's different than right in front of the binding?
Yeah, it's not cool anymore.
I don't even know if that's
You can't do that anymore.
I can't get on board
Except
with that.
Now I say that, and like all the footage of me doing mute fives and this, I'm like barely touching my ski at all because I can't flex or I don't bend like I used to. But I love the Reckoner 102. I think it's awesome. I know there are people out there that have had some issues with its strength and durability, but I think from a skiing experience perspective, it's just so much fun. And I think like a great way to kind of differentiate or decide whether it's going to be right for you is how much do you weigh and how aggressive you are. If you're really heavy and really aggressive, just don't even consider it.
And like that said though, like I've had moderate success on this ski. Like the DPS, it's not intuitive for me. Yeah. But once you kind of figure out what it does well and what it wants to do, you can play to its strengths. Yeah. You were saying, those higher edge angles. Yeah. You know, the carbon does come alive like it does in the Elan.
Absolutely does, yeah.
So you can feel those construction techniques benefiting bigger skiers, but yeah, there are better options for those.
Well, I think you nailed it. Like you have to adapt your skiing to the ski's capabilities and the ski's personality. And I think the people that have bought it and not fallen in love with it are skiers that aren't doing that. They're buying it and expecting the ski to adapt to how they ski, and those skiers are fast and big and aggressive. Yeah. And then they're like, well, this doesn't do it. And it's like, well, yeah. What did you think it was going to do?
But it's very satisfying to make very clean, short, round turns.
So fun. Yeah. Yeah. It's a super rewarding ski. Our esteemed colleague, Matt McGinnis, he's always been a big Reckoner 102 fan.
And our other colleague, Brad, has a pair of these, and he just kills it in the woods.
Yeah. And he's lighter. He's closer to my size.
Yeah.
He might even be a little lighter.
Yeah. But it's fun to see him. You can kind of see him on a daily basis kind of scooting around in the woods, and he looks like he's having a blast on that.
Quick note on these before you dive into them, Bob. We did not have the 2024 graphic in stock, so you're looking at a 2023, and I didn't take it out of the plastic because I would have had to re-sticker it.
Excellent. This is a Liberty Helix 98. We've been dealing with Origins and Evolves in our All Mountain and Freeride series. So that's why this has stayed away from those realms.
And why Origin 101 is not in this.
Right. So nice to have, Liberty in their twin tip, like in their element, very well known for being freestyle and freeride oriented company. Really one of the first, I wouldn't say first, but one of an innovative companies in terms of wider twin tips over the years.
Well, and the Helix name has been around, actually, it hasn't been around since their beginning because the C note was I don't know. Helix has been a name in Liberty's collection for a long time. They had Helix, they had Double Helix. So it's cool to see that it still remains in their collection.
Yeah, and this is their spin on a 98 millimeter underfoot twin tip.
Yeah.
They put a lot of their technology and construction techniques that have been successful at the Origin and Evolve line and kind of kept them squarely in this. Bamboo and poplar, we have carbon stringers through the middle here. So we're getting that energy, but using that bamboo, and we've talked about this before, like this is the thickest core profile on this wall, I would say by a decent margin. So that vertical poured sidewall throughout really gives this thing just an extra bit of silence to it.
It's almost like twice as thick as anything else up here. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and I think our running joke this year is that I call it insulative properties, and Jeff thinks that I mean it keeps your feet warm, but I don't.
My feet get cold a lot, so that's pretty much immediately where my brain goes.
Vibration insulation. So there's a smooth and kind of composed feel to these skis just due to that core thickness. But nice even flex throughout. I mean, this is a pretty soft tail. I'm putting this up there with what we see with the next ski in terms of being pretty flexible back there.
Yeah, but the difference is the blend is flexible everywhere.
Yeah, and this is a little bit more in the tail.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is going to show up as well. It's easier when I smash my foot into it.
When you step on it with 225 pounds, yeah.
Yeah, they'll bend. But, I would say this falls more in line with the head in terms of having it be that more cambered underfoot. I mean, it's actually really stiffly cambered.
Yeah, and it's like snappy.
Yeah.
I think that's something that has always been true with Liberty skis, is they're snappy.
Yeah. When it's cambered, not decambered, there is a little bit more of that traditional, more Oblivion 102 style with that, more abrupt splay at the end. And that's just, that's their way of doing it. It's less progressive, I would say. There is that round, slightly tapered shovel, but it's not nearly as dramatic as what we'll see with, Chronic and from a tail perspective, the Revolt. But this one is just another one of those skis that kind of hits a lot of those mid notes and does it in its own way.
Yeah.
But a little bit more intuitive. Like this is an easy ski to get on and go.
Yeah.
Anytime that you're incorporating more camber into a ski and someone gets on it, they'll kind of acknowledge that and say, whoa, great energy out of this ski.
Right.
And that's due to the camber.
Yep.
Whether we talk about it with like Black Crow's, what's the 85 underfoot?
The Vertice?
Vertice, thank you. Like camber, there's just a lot of camber, and that's the story. And everyone likes it because you get the energy out of it. So that's what Helix has going for it, and I think it's a really good addition to this wall because it just shows how different companies go about making similar skis in different ways.
Origins are better in soft snow.
Yep.
Even the 96, even though it's narrower, the shape
Yeah.
it just works a lot better in soft snow. Helixes are more responsive, more precise, more energetic, snappier,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
And when you get to the 88, that's a purely
The 88
symmetrical.
is a pure park ski.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll look at that, hopefully.
Yeah.
Do we have an 88 in this building? I don't know. We better. I'll have a lot of things to say.
I know, if we don't.
This next ski is the Line Blend. I almost said Blade, and that's a wildly different ski. Line Blend back again for another season. I think last year was the year that it changed. And actually the footage that you're going to see, including me falling, is actually on last year's ski, because I don't remember ever skiing this graphic.
I don't remember it either.
But last year's graphic is the same performance. I always like to talk about this ski through the lens of my good friend or longtime friend, Will Wesson. You may know of Will Wesson. He's been a line athlete for a long, long time. He started the Traveling Circus webisode series like not 20 years ago, but almost 20 years ago. It's pretty crazy. They were like 22, 21.
Like that series is almost a drinking age in
Yeah.
America.
Yeah, I mean, we started it. I was loosely involved. They started it, I think, when we were still in college. So anyways, Will has become known as one of the best rail skiers in the world, and really has held that spot for the last 15 years. And he was instrumental in kind of redesigning the blend and getting it to work for how he likes to ski and what he likes to do. And what Will is most known for is really innovative techie rail tricks. And for really innovative techie rail tricks, you need a ski that is laughably soft. I laughed at Reckoner 102, but this takes it to another level. And when we were going through and flexing these, and I got to Reckoner 102, and I was like, well, this is the softest. And you were like, not even close. I really can't emphasize how soft this ski is. It is just, like, this is one of those skis where, what was I talking about before, where like I could bend it in half with one hand. So what comes along with that is a significant lack of stability. The ski is not strong at speed, nor is it trying to be.
Right.
But what you can do on it is things like nose blocks, which is where I fell. I almost had it though. I fully committed. You got to give me that.
It looked like it almost looked like that was your end goal. I'm bending this ski until I fall over.
I've said too much to
to not put it in.
Yeah, I think everyone knows that was a mistake at this point, although I wish I could go back in time and say I meant to just see how much I could flex it. But nose blocks, presses, butters, smears, nollies, ollies. I'm running out of fingers again, or maybe I'm running out of ideas again.
Groundwork.
Yeah, it's like it can do cool tricks on the ground. It can also do like nose presses on rails more easily because it's just so easy to bend the ski, which I just think is really cool. When you have a ski that's this soft, you don't need a drastic shape, which I think is really interesting. Really light, 1,710 grams. And then, like I said, when you have a super soft ski, like there are a lot of skis up here with more rocker, but because the ski is so stiff, there's your rocker.
Right, there
like
it is.
it just comes. It like as soon as you start skiing it, it's like it's bent into a rockered or decambered shape. So pretty similar in the tail. You know, there is rocker, but not a tremendous amount of splay. If there was a lot of splay with this flex pattern, you like wouldn't be able to ski it.
Right, you'd just be kind of spinning around.
You'd be spinning around.
Yeah.
But blend is really cool. There's definitely the right application and the right skier for it. It's really not a great all-mountain ski. Certainly not a good groomer ski. It's good in the trees, but you have to ski it with like kind of a balanced, less aggressive skiing style. It's really best for somebody who wants a wider, playful park ski. And even among park skis, it's like not the greatest for big jumps because you're just going to wash out on landing unless you land perfectly. So again, it's like, it's a pretty specific application for this ski, which I think is fine. And I think it's really cool that the industry still has skis like this, and I guess commendable to Line because they're one of those brands that is helping to carry that forward. And of course Line can have a ski like this that's sort of one-dimensional when they come out with skis like the next one that I think is very well-rounded and I think can be enjoyed by a lot of different skiers.
Yeah, and I've been talking about this, and they also came out with the new Bacon line that have the same build. So like they use maple macro block in here.
Yep.
And so I've been talking about like maple saplings and how
bendy they are.
If you cut out like a quarter size diameter maple sapling, you can tie that thing in knots.
Right.
And it doesn't break.
Right, which is blend.
Yeah. So that's kind of what you want. You don't think about like old growth maple. Think about new maple.
New growth maple.
Yeah, new growth maple.
Yeah, I think that's a really good analogy.
Yeah. And that also differentiates it from this new Chronic 101, which uses the aspen wood core. So similar to what we see in the K2 in terms of the wood use. This one puts more of it in there. So this is like Liberty style thickness in terms of that core application.
You see it in the weight too.
Yeah, almost 2,000 grams, 1,900 grams. But that doesn't mean that it is rugged. You know, these shovels and these tails are very flexible.
I think it's a nice mix of playful and rugged.
Yeah.
Which I think they've done. I think that's like the coolest thing about it is, and that's why I think it's more like it's a more well-rounded ski than that blend, because they've kind of put multiple personalities in this ski.
Yeah, and we did our review on this in the 94 earlier this year, and the main thing we talked about was that variation between the thickness of the core in the mid-body and then the thinness of the tip. They use even what they call thin tip, so they basically are eliminating the wood at the very end. It's like top sheet to base, and that's it. So it's super thin, and that is really reducing the swing weight, making this thing insanely maneuverable. But when you get it up on edge, like there's some substance here, and it's really a rewarding ski
pretty
in an
trustworthy.
on-trail format, like more so than I thought. You know, this is one of those skis where my on-trail expectation was here, and the reality was here.
Well, you probably don't historically have too much chronic experience.
No, I think this might have even been like my first.
Yeah, so that makes sense. And like, as more of a twin tip, or at least more of a park skier, you know, you were saying you've skied a lot of twin tips. The chronic's always been known for that, of like matching park performance with like some good strength.
And then total progression in terms of the shape and profile. This is like as modern and new school as it gets.
Basically just a stronger playmaker.
Yeah. You know, it's got that
stronger, heavier playmaker.
Full vertical sidewall. But yeah, probably very similar in terms of that rocker profile and taper shape, that nice smooth early taper lines. I think that lines up really well. Another one of these skis that goes from sidewall to cap with the rocker. So emphasizing the difference between tips, waist, and tail.
Yeah, and then like continuing it into that thin tip.
Yep.
It's kind of a cool progression.
Yep, thin tip, thin tail, that nice easy transition like you were saying, and long tail rocker. You know, this is a little bit more bowed out than the new 94, so that just kind of puts it on the more free ride end of the spectrum.
It really is like fascinating, the similarities.
Yeah.
Like it's like they could have like sat in a room together.
With their drawings.
I don't think Elan and Line are having many meetings together, but you could tell a story that they did and it would be believable.
Yeah. And I think that we also talked about this where this 101 has more of that soft snow and free ride potential. The 94 is going to be your
more park ski.
oriented.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still love to ski park on that 101. I think the shape, like everything that I was saying about Playmaker kind of carries over, and why I think that's a great shape.
Yeah.
And same thing with ARV 100, and same thing with a lot of things up here. A lot of that's in Nightstick, and yeah, I just think it's. I don't know. Don't get me going. I'm just gonna start like, we're just gonna get real like, personally excited about the state of twin tips right now. We're just like it's. I know I said this about something else, but we're truly in like a golden age of ski manufacturing, because look at all these things.
And you know, thinking about it too, like I said, like I'm not a park skier, but I'd say half of these skis on the wall, if you said, here you go, I'd be like, yep,
Psyched.
totally.
Yeah.
And like this is one of them.
Yeah.
Like I really, really enjoyed my time on this and would use this as an everyday ski, no doubt.
Killer graphic too.
Yeah.
I like the lightning.
It's loud.
It is loud. Yep. Next ski up here, this is the Nordica Unleashed 98, and this is really interesting. When this ski came out, you know, it was a Soul Rider replacement, and then it was also kind of like billed as sort of alternative to Enforcer 104 with less metal. So this has that kind of Do they call it performance wood core in this ski? They must.
Yeah, they do.
Pretty similar
Yeah.
to any wood core that you'll find in Nordica skis. But then they use terrain-specific metal in this ski, which is coming from the Santa Ana collection. So there's full-width metal up here, and then it tapers to a thin amount of metal, and then goes full-width underfoot, and then does the same thing in the tail. And there aren't really any other skis up here that use metal.
Right.
Nightstick.
Some in the Fischer.
And that's it, which is really interesting. Yeah. So people have been surprised that we've said this about this ski, and hopefully that's enough of an example that it gives it some clarity. This is the best carving ski up here.
Yeah.
It has to be. It's got like really impressive torsional stiffness, and what comes along with that is it's kind of demanding too. So this is far from the loosest, most maneuverable ski up here. We can talk more and more about this, or as much as we really want to, but it can still do all the things that we've said all these other skis can do. It just, you need to be a little bit more engaged as a skier and have a necessary skill level. Otherwise, you're going to get on this thing and just be like, you'll be kind of underwhelmed.
You won't be able to access it.
Exactly,
like,
and then
really,
you won't know what it's supposed to do.
It likes to have an active participant in the process.
Exactly, like a lot of skier input.
Yeah.
Which, like a lot of twin tips, they don't need skier input.
Which is what a lot of people love about them.
Right.
You can just go.
Right. So
yeah.
I love skiing the Nordica Unleashed 98 for like opposite reasons why I love skiing the Playmaker 101. They are completely different to me, and I ski them with a completely different mindset and attitude and purpose and goals. So 1,900 grams in this Unleashed 98. A lot of camber. You know, there's not like a ton of camber height, but a lot of the ski is camber, which is really important. There's not a crazy amount of tip rocker.
Right.
Like less tip rocker than an Enforcer 104 for sure from a length perspective. And then same is true in the tail, and there's really not that much early taper either. So when you take a ski that's got some metal in it, that's got a relatively stiff longitudinal flex pattern, like easily one of the stiffest skis up here, and then a lot of torsional stiffness, and yeah, it's gonna be like kind of tricky to break free from time to time, and it's not gonna be like the loosest, most maneuverable ski in the world, but boy, does it rip turns.
It's just funny to think about the difference between like swing weight. You know, this like puts metal at the
in
ends,
the extremities.
Whereas
exactly.
so many of these other skis
put metal in the middle. Try and make the tip as light as possible.
As you can.
Yeah,
And
which
this
is like
the
this is
total
the opposite concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it is the most precise ski on this wall. I think it's the strongest carving ski. It's close to the most stability in a straight line. I would say the next ski kind of rivals it in that sense. And yeah, it's just so much fun to ski. I love skiing it in the park too, and I love skiing in the park for all the same reasons.
Yeah.
It is extremely trustworthy, extremely reliable. When I was talking about like the occasional washing out on the Playmaker 101, that tends to never happen on these. And also, yes, it's harder to ski in the park. So like Playmaker 101, if you're like an intermediate soft snow or an intermediate all mountain skier that wants to dabble in some park skiing, Playmaker 101 is a great choice. If you're an intermediate skier that likes to carve and you want to dabble in some park skiing, this is, I suppose, the choice on paper, but you got to be ready for what it takes in the park.
Like I feel like the Playmaker, you're like landing on a cloud, and this one you're just landing with a thud.
You're landing like, it's not that you're landing with a thud, you're landing into like, it's like you're driving a really well-built, precise rally car.
Yeah.
Like you land and then you got to turn like
yeah.
right away. It's not like you land and then just kind of like do whatever.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've, was a Soul Rider fan, obviously, as well.
Yep.
And so was a little sad to see that ski go away, but this really took the performance of that thing to the next level.
Yeah, I like this more than Soul Rider 97. I
yeah,
wasn't sure at first, but I'm fully convinced now.
People would always ask, because I'm on the Soul Rider, they're like, is that stable enough? And I'm like, no, but I'm stable.
Oh, sure.
You know, where I'm
I
like, yeah,
found plenty of stability in the Soul Rider.
not me. You know, you get going on that thing, and it was.
Yeah,
it
for me, it
nuts,
was a lot
but
of camera and had carbon in
Yeah.
it. So it was plenty.
This takes that and just kind of boosts it to the next level.
Yeah.
You know, on the 186, I just find so much to like, especially around here where you're mixing a lot of groomer skiing.
And firm groomers.
And
This
firm
can handle
groomers.
true
Yep.
firm groomers.
Yeah, and then right to the bumps, right to the trees.
Yeah.
You know, it's not quite as easy as you were saying. Like, yeah, it doesn't just waver and wander like that Dynastar does.
Right.
Like, you need to actually be a participant in the skiing.
And I think you'll see it, at least in my skiing, maybe not in your skiing because you're better at skiing moguls than me, but the amount of time that the tail is off the snow
Yeah.
on this ski, when I'm skiing moguls, that's a necessity because like otherwise it's not going to come around.
Yours are also farther to the middle. Like, you have more tail.
I got a lot of tail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that might,
That's a
I
good
think
point.
that makes a big difference too, whereas I'm just on the whatever line it is and
Fair enough.
works great for me.
That's an excellent point.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of performance and capabilities, like that's, and it, you know, that's why this ski could have been, this was the most often asked, why isn't the Unleashed 98 in the 100 millimeter?
And it could have
all-mountain?
been, and you had it in there.
Yeah,
You know, when you were putting that comparison together, you had this ski in there and you had that next ski in there, and I made you take them out.
yeah. And I think that they work really well in here.
Yeah, I stand by that decision.
Well, they offer the foil, you know, the opposite
Right.
of these skis, and
Right.
they would have done the same in the 100, but we also had other playful ones like the Liberty Origin 101 that
which
served as
is even more playful.
yeah,
Like that Liberty Origin 101 is easier in soft snow. It's easier to release tail edge than this ski. So it's not like just because this is a twin tip, if we put it in that 100 millimeter directional comparison, it would have been the most playful ski.
Yeah.
It actually would have been like somewhere in the middle.
right. Interesting.
Super interesting.
And you know, it's a nice transition here to the Rossignol because this Black Ops 98.
It's pretty much held the title that we just gave that ski for
Yeah.
the last 4 years.
Right, before the Unleashed 98 existed, this was the Unleashed 98.
Right.
And it was really interesting seeing people that have really enjoyed this ski over the years get on this
Yeah.
Unleashed and say, whoa,
You heard a lot of wows.
yeah, this is something different. And
Yep.
a lot of that is due to the construction, but also just that more traditional shape. Like if you're, all things being equal, if you're putting you know, a more burly construction into something with more camber, you're going to get that wow factor.
Correct.
Because
Yep.
you're combining elements. You're combining the energy of the shape with the construction technique.
Yeah, and it's certainly not to say that Unleashed 98 is just better than Black Ops 98.
No,
they're
they-
different.
yep.
Like this ski is looser,
Yep.
which I really like. So it's just they're different. But I think that wow factor was coming from the torsional stiffness and it's like its willingness to come across the fall line
Yeah.
like really easily. And then you're like, that happens a lot as skiers when you start to make like dynamic carves. You're like, whoa, cool.
Yeah. But I would say that the Black Ops 98 to the Unleashed 98 is one of our most consistent asks. Like,
Yeah.
what's the difference? What's the deal?
Yep.
So to answer that, from a construction perspective, this one is a little bit more simplistic. It does use the poplar wood core. We do get a lot of fiberglass in here. It does add to the weight. We also get rubber in the tips and the tails. Those act as damping agents. Again, kind of taking the same note, like let's put heavy stuff in the
Yeah.
ends. They're
Yep.
not looking to lighten swing weight with this, and it shows on the scale 2,050 grams.
Yeah.
So it is heavier than the Unleashed 98, which is just a testament to the fact that fiberglass uses a lot of epoxy, and epoxy is heavy.
Yep.
So that is why this thing weighs a lot for what it is. It also explains some of the differences between how they feel. So that's the difference from construction. In terms of shape, like you were saying, there's just more like driftiness to this ski.
Yeah,
so we do
exactly.
have that longer rocker in the tips
Yep.
and in the tails. It's not as dramatic splay. Like that Unleashed definitely has more distance between.
Such a twin tippy feel with that
Yeah.
Unleashed.
Yep. And you can really see it like in the footage too. Like the very tail of that Unleashed is never in the snow.
It's tough to film.
Yeah.
Kicks up a lot of snow.
Yeah, a lot of spray. This is flatter, so there's a little bit less, but the rocker is longer, and it's a little bit more flexible too.
Yeah.
So you're able to manipulate it a little easier and just get it to kind of bend to your whim.
Yeah, a little easier in the trees,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
So if you kind of gave me a choice, you said, okay, you get to have one of these two skis. What are you taking? And I kind of divide it into on trail and off trail.
Yeah.
I would rather use this Black Ops if I'm only skiing moguls and trees.
Yeah.
Like
I agree.
soft snow, moguls, trees. This is a better option, a little bit better floater. Has a slightly longer turn radius, so it's just kind of easier to point it where you want it to go. It doesn't hook up nearly as, reactively as that Unleashed does. But on trail, in a carved turn, I think we, beat it pretty much to death. That is a superior on-trail carver for a few different reasons.
And for me, those reasons carry over to park too.
Yeah.
Like I think Unleashed is a better park ski because it's more precise.
Yeah.
It's a little lighter and it's a little more precise, and that's kind of what you need.
Yeah. And then from like how the ski feels, this one is quieter. It's damper. It just
smoother.
has more of that silence to it. So it just feels smoother from like a soft snow perspective. So engaging those turns, it just kind of flows along with the terrain. It doesn't fight against it. Whereas this one will kind of take you on a different journey than you might have dreamed up in your mind. Whereas this one is a lot more intuitive.
Yeah, and a little more forgiving. I don't
Yeah.
know, like I hesitate to use the word forgiving because neither of those skis is particularly forgiving, but
And like I talked about with that Dynastar, the slicer is basically this. And each and every time that I got on a new one, because like I'd put a lot of days on my twin tips, and they would kind of run out of energy after
yeah.
150 days or something like that. You get on a new pair and you really feel them, you feel that life coming back into it. So, when they're new and they're fresh, they have a lot of energy and a lot of grip, and that's really nice.
Now, I'm not convinced that they're not exactly slicers.
You think that they are exactly?
Yeah,
I think they are too.
okay.
If one of the Dynastar or Rossignol people are watching and they refute, then that's fine. But I'm 99% sure this is a slicer.
I feel like it's just not talked about very often.
This might be different because it comes in different lengths.
Yeah. So I'm not 100% certain, but
Yeah.
if it's not the same thing, it's very, very, very similar. And that's not a bad thing. Like,
No.
there's a reason
Yeah.
why slicers were so popular. Like, it's just a sweet ski.
Yeah.
And this is awesome. So,
And I guess we should say Menace. Menace was the last
yeah,
slicer.
but wasn't Menace a slicer
Yeah,
too?
Menace was slicer.
And then Holy Shred was Menace?
No, Holy Shred was,
But wasn't it the same thing?
I'm not sure.
That's where I'm hung up too, is I'm not sure.
Yeah. They're very
Was
similar.
Holy Shred and Menace the same thing? I think that would be a good...
Yeah.
And I don't think they were. I wish I could remember better.
It's the sizing that trips me up.
Yeah.
Because the slicer came in a 187, and
Right.
that was always an elusive ski to find.
Right.
But when you
Anyways.
got it, you kept getting them.
Yeah.
They're just super easy and they go anywhere and do anything.
Yeah, no, it's a great ski.
Yeah.
Super fun to ski.
Yeah.
Really, really well-rounded.
Yeah, and that's, I think we spent enough time covering the similarities and differences, and because that's just they're very popular
Yeah.
skis with, on paper, similar characteristics.
Well, and and kudos to any of you asking that question.
Yeah.
Like if through your ski selection journey you have landed on Unleashed 98 or Black Ops 98, you've done a really good job
Yep.
because you've sifted through. We've got 16 skis up here, and there are way more that you can consider. So you've sifted through all those skis, and you've landed on two that are extremely similar.
Yeah. No, I really enjoy both of these skis, but again, for
Different reasons.
pretty different reasons.
And then last ski up here, fun one to end on because it is pretty unique. It is its own thing. This is the Volkl Revolt 104. I think we're entering the 3rd season for this, or even like the 4th season.
It's at least 3.
It's getting kind of crazy how long
Yeah.
we've been talking about some of these skis, but I still feel like this is a very modern, progressive design, and I think that's reflected in the fact that you don't really see anything else like it up here.
No, and like even when it first came out, like I don't think we knew what to make of it specifically.
Yeah.
Like, is this a wide twin tip? Is it a free ride ski that can?
Is it a powder ski?
Is it a powder ski? Is it a wide park ski? Like,
And you know what the answer is?
yes.
Yes, it is all of those things. So pretty simple build in here. It's just a multi-layer wood core, sandwich construction, vertical sidewalls, no frills. It is made in China. You know, I think some Volkl fans or some people appreciate when we call that out. I don't have any issues with it personally.
Doesn't bother me.
It still skis really well. 1,990 grams, so almost 2,000 grams exactly. It isn't like tremendously stiff, nor is it soft. So construction and flex pattern and stuff like that there's nothing unique about it. It's pretty darn straightforward. All of the uniqueness comes from its shape. So I kid you not, the tip rocker starts there.
I didn't think you'd lie.
You didn't think so?
No.
It's almost twice as much tip rocker from a length perspective as anything up here. And then the same is true in the tail. Like that's where tail rocker starts.
Yeah.
So like half the ski is rocker. There's not much camber height underfoot. And then we talk about taper a lot. So some early taper up here in the tip, a lot of early taper in the tail. And what we generally are not talking about when we're talking about taper is the difference in tip and tail width. So the difference between this dimension and this dimension is huge.
Yeah.
So the tip to tail taper is pretty severe, and that gives it just tremendous maneuverability in soft snow. Like you can kind of see how pointy it is back here in the tail compared to nice and fat and wide up here in the tip. And that combined with the width, you know, we're 104 underfoot here. It is by far the best soft snow ski on this wall, in my opinion. I think Koala 103 is a contender. I think Playmaker 101 feels great in soft snow. A lot of these skis feel great in soft snow, but this starts to feel like a powder ski.
Yeah, give me that in a 188 in deep snow, and that's
Totally.
where I'm at.
So I love the way it feels in soft snow. If you have that kind of mentality and that focus as a skier, you're going to absolutely love this thing. It does work on a groomer too. It's just a little weird because there's so much rocker.
Our colleague Tyler, who skied with us last year, he's moved on, but he had a Mantra 102, and then he bought this.
Oh, and he was confused, right?
Yeah, he's like, oh, I'm getting that Revolt 104, and
Yeah.
you know, and I'm like, oh, you're gonna ski that here, like on the trail? And he's like, yeah, it's gonna be like my Mantra 102, and I'm like,
no, it's
I don't
not.
think so.
Yeah.
And you know, I remember him going out the first couple of days, and he's like, I just don't get it. And I'm like, okay, like don't ski it like your Mantra 102.
Right, you gotta ski it like flatter.
Yeah, ski it flatter, wait for some soft snow, like
Yeah.
it'll make sense.
Yeah.
Don't drive the tip like you're doing your Mantra.
Right.
And he came in the next day, maybe it was a little soft snow, and he's like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, I do remember this now that you're bringing that up. So yeah, I think soft snow is its highlight. We talked about backcountry jumps somewhere in this conversation. I think it's probably the best backcountry jump ski on this wall.
Yep.
The things that make it not a great park ski to me make it a good backcountry jump, which maybe is counterintuitive for some people, but in the park, I like precision and responsiveness, but in a backcountry setting, I want looseness and forgiveness.
Yeah.
So a lot of that comes through on takeoff. Typically when you're taking off on a backcountry jump, especially taking off switch, but really anything, you don't have much room. And what happens is you have to do like a really strong like finish to your takeoff to get your ski off the snow to then start spinning. And when you have just such severe rocker lines as this ski, it's just very like surfy. It's not ever gonna catch, and that just really helps kind of give you some forgiveness if you're taking off in like a less than perfect situation. So I don't love it in the park, especially if you ski it back to back with a Revolt 90 or a Revolt 96. Those two skis are awesome in the park, and this thing just Yeah, it just has too much powder ski influence in its shape and design to really excel in the park, but it can do it, and it'll do it just fine, especially if you're the type of skier that wants to focus more on soft snow.
Yeah, and one of the other interesting things about this one that I've always keyed in on is the consistency of the core thickness.
Yeah.
So as opposed to some of these others that go thick to thin, this stays pretty consistent throughout.
And I think they need it because of the shape.
Yeah.
If it was thin in these extremity portions, it would be so soft and then just so washy and just kind of lost.
Yeah, and that just adds to the kind of sturdy overall nature is that there's substance in the front and the back. It's not super light and flickable.
There's an unnecessary amount of barcodes on the base of that ski.
Yeah, it's 4 of them.
That was pointed out to me yesterday as I put the 4th one on. They were like, we don't need 4. I was like, oh, you gave me the ticket. It's going on here anyways. But no, I think a fun one to end on. You see a lot of Volkl athletes using it, and you see them using it in a lot of different formats. I've even seen a number of people using this with like a Duke PT and just having that be their kind of backcountry touring jump freestyle setup. So really cool ski and quite unique on this wall. Probably not my favorite. I think part of that is living here in Stowe. Like the application is fewer and further between for that ski. But I'd certainly appreciate it every time I ski it. I got to spend a good amount of time on that graphic this past season. Had a blast.
Yeah, and this was another one that didn't make sense to me in the 180. The 188.
You had to go 188.
Yeah,
that makes sense because the effective edge is so weird.
Whereas some of these other ones, I'm okay
in a 180.
In the 180.
Yeah.
Something like this.
Yeah, sure.
So, but that was one of the things that I found this year for that Revolt 104.
Yep. So, that's it. That was really fun.
Yay twin tips.
Yeah, yay twin tips. Probably, I mean, it's got to be my favorite category. I don't know. Maybe the narrower twin tips is just as much fun. I don't know. I joke a little bit because at this point in my life and skiing career, if you can call it that, I feel like I appreciate one thing just as much as the other.
Yeah.
I have just as much fun on our ski bum race days as I do hiking park jumps with Carl.
Yeah. It's interesting, like we use the word playfulness a lot, and the plays in the name of some of these skis, and it's like, that doesn't just mean that they're more fun than everything else.
Yeah, it just means they're more playful.
Yeah. Like more floaty and more forgiving. And
right.
I'm sure we could make an equation if we had to.
Yeah, Wingman 86 Black Edition is just as fun as this ski. They're just different.
Yep.
Certainly not as playful.
No.
So that's it. Let us know if you have any questions as usual. We'll probably go back to non-twin tips for a few videos before we do the narrower twin tip. But that'll be really interesting because, like you said at the beginning, there are a lot more like park-focused skis in that grouping, which will be interesting to kind of see what the outliers are for all-mountain performance and stuff like that. So let us know if you have any questions, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.